You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinesic.
Welcome back to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I'm Tom Kinesic. Welcome to episode 70. And today we get to put one of my my long-standing issues to bed.
There's a lot of those. Which one? Which one is it?
Well, I've developed a habit for mispronouncing last names, as easy as they may be. And I know I've mispronounced this guy's last name a ton of times. I think I probably said it right maybe once or twice, but I bring him up a lot because he's doing really awesome stuff. So
we've probably said it. Actually, I shy away from saying it because I know I don't know how to pronounce it. That I don't think I've ever actually said it, but I know you've probably said it every way imaginable at this point. So you had to have at least gotten it right once. Yeah.
Well, I look at it and then a lot of last names. I look at them and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna nail this one, and then it just kind of. I doubt myself right as it's about to come out.
Now, I will say this because I think we both have this issue. We both have last names that gets mispronounced all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, because we always get Nesic for you, which
I've heard all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Like for Chismar, I've gotten Chrismar, Christmas, Chismas, Chisman, like.
It's and those are the only ones you can say. That's not including
that's true. They get a little out there, but
yeah. So today's guest is a TikTok superstar, yes. And Kyle, I'm going to let you say your last name so I don't flub it again.
I was waiting on you to introduce me.
There was no way we were going to say it beforehand.
Y'all, I think y'all did get it wrong on here before. It's Kyle Lybarger, so it's
Lybarger. Yes, yeah, I don't think I said that one ever.
I don't think you did
either. And what really threw me off is the first time when I actually mispronounced your name. It was then so one of your friends on Facebook said, "Oh no, it's pronounced Lybarger," and then I'm like, "Oh, I've really screwed that one up." Then I was closer the first time, but
what's even better was that Kyle has got to listen to all the mispronunciations. Yeah. I hope you got a good chuckle at that over the episodes as we mispronounce it.
Yeah, it was fun to listen to. I always get weird pronunciations for my last name, so it's a weird one, and not many people have ever even met anybody with who's a Lybarger, so it's not a very all.
I was going to say I don't know that I've ever met another Lybarger or another Kinesic for that matter. I did meet another Chismar through work. Someone called up whose last name was Chismar, and I was floored to actually talk to someone with the same last name, and he didn't seem phased at all. He was just like, whatever. It's a name. Yeah. So Kyle, why don't you tell us who you are?
Yeah, well, my name's Kyle Lybarger. I'm a forester here in North Alabama, now a conservationist, I guess, and native plant enthusiast. I own a small native plant nursery, nothing like y'all's, but it's just a little backyard nursery I've had for 2 years, and recently started making TikToks, and that's been going well. And I think Tom's been in my Facebook group on Facebook for a while. I got a Facebook group, Native Habitat Managers. So I'm an outdoor enthusiast, and it seems to mesh well with my love of native plants. So
awesome. I'm actually a member as well. I was invited by Dwayne Estes. So I thought that was very cool.
So what came first, your love for the outdoors or your love for native plants?
The outdoors. I was big into the outdoors as a kid. Like most conservationists or outdoor folks my age, I like Steve Irwin. So I think that's a lot of big inspiration. A lot of folks of my generation. And my dad had me in Scouts. He was an Eagle Scout, and I was outdoors all the time. I was hunting and fishing and that kind of. As I matured, I kind of found out if I want to manage for wildlife, native plants is the best way to do it. And so that kind of steered me in the direction of native plants.
You know, I'm kind of glad you mentioned something that you did. And it's something I don't think we've ever really touched on is, to me, the importance of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, especially for the love of nature, for kids that don't necessarily have an outlet for nature. It gives you, like, that's where my kids did a lot of my oldest son is a Eagle Scout, and just for learning how to proper way to shoot a gun or a bow and arrow, or identifying trees just on a basic level. And canoeing and kayaking and camping was huge. And I think that was a good portion. I think even for me, even though I may have never connected that was a.
Yeah. And that's an interesting, because when I was thinking about it, I always got frustrated with, I think I only went through Cub Scouts, never got into Boy Scouts, but I was always frustrated because we do these big like camping trips, and I was doing that anyway. So I was like, what do you mean we're learning how to build a fire? Who doesn't know how to build a fire? It was like stuff I already was doing, just because my dad, same thing. He was actually a forester, and before he started the nursery, so he was into all that kind of stuff, and he shared that with my brother and I remember we had like fire building competitions in the backyard. It was who could boil a can of water in the quickest amount of time. And we had friends that when they would come over, that was like our thing. We'd build little fires so you could boil water the fastest.
That's pretty awesome.
It was like that around my house too. So yeah, my dad was Eagle Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout, and third generation involved in it. And yeah, it was definitely a big part of getting me outdoors. And I wasn't the type that could sit in a classroom very well. I always wanted to be out doing something. So that was a good way for me to be out in the woods, and probably started, or probably made me realize that I loved being outdoors, and probably led to my career path. So I'm super appreciative of it, of the scouting. I guess now there's several groups that do scouting, but I was in Boy Scouts. So
I know, and a lot of the my fiance's son is in Boy Scouts right now, and I guess a lot of the, and the other part, as far as conservation goes, I never really thought about the amount of land that scouts own, that they pretty much keep natural for camps, and they're in jeopardy of losing that through lack of membership from COVID and lawsuits over the time. Like they're looking at selling some of the major preserves in New Jersey just to help fund. And like I know one of their camps, they were saying needs over $1 million in repairs just to keep it going. They have to sell some of their land off to maintain some of the other ones. And those, I think, are natural areas we take for granted that you don't think of when you calculate in where you go, because you're not visiting them. You're not walking through, but our children are taking advantage of that. And I'd hate to see that be lost over time.
Yeah. I've actually decided to go to a scout camp here close by to, I guess, give them some advice on managing for natives. So that might be a cool opportunity down the road. So.
Totally. Now, are you originally from Alabama?
Yeah, I am. My dad's from Oklahoma though. So
okay.
I got a mixed accent, so
because I've never actually visited Alabama myself. How are the natural areas? Is it still a lot of natural areas? Is some of that in danger at this point?
Yeah, there are. Unfortunately, a lot of those places are underfunded and they don't have a lot of folks that are helping. They need a lot more people hired on to actually take care of those areas, but there are a lot of places, and some of them are managed better than others, but a lot of them are overtaken with invasives and need a lot of work. But unfortunately, a lot of them don't have, a lot of the ecosystems we find on private lands. There's a lot of diversity in Alabama, and it changes a lot in terrain and soil types, and different plants grow in different places, and you can find some rare plants that are, on private land, and there's not a, public land anywhere near it to restore, those plants on. So there's a lot of them, but there could be more. And hopefully we'll see some of those places managed better in the future.
Yeah, it's the one thing is that we always preach is education and awareness. And I think you've been really at the forefront as far as awareness through TikTok and Facebook and social media. You've really, I think, captured a large audience. What was kind of your inspiration for that? What led you? First of all, did you ever think it would have gotten to where it is now? And what was your initial inspiration for doing it?
Oh, no, I didn't. I never imagined. I've been making those videos like that on Facebook and Instagram for years, and I don't think I ever got more than 1,000 views. And so I just was like, I'll post a couple on TikTok, and it blew up, and I was not expecting it. But it's nice. It's been nice because y'all are probably the same way. I like to talk about what I'm passionate about, and my family gets tired of that after a while. So there's only so much, so many times I could talk about native plants before they start going crazy. So it's been a nice outlet to share what I'm passionate about and be able to talk about it.
When did you first realize that the TikTok was blowing up for you?
I posted a video of a monarch laying eggs, or some eggs that I saw being laid on a milkweed plant, and that one blew up, and I was like, was not expecting it. I think I posted maybe 4 or 5 videos before that one, and it was just me walking around pointing out plants, and that one blew up, and then it just went from there. Some videos do good, some of them don't. I like to, educate people on native plants and point out native plants and talk about specific ones, and those seem to not do as well as some of the other ones. But people like to talk about things we need to be doing different. Managing ecosystems. They like to talk about lawns. That's a big one. If you talk about lawns, if you diss a lawn on TikTok, it's gonna blow up. So, or Bradford pears. People hate Bradford pears too.
So those are some good tips. So it's funny because I actually just saw again your lawn video that you did. I can't remember the exact title. It was like how to destroy an ecosystem. And it just popped up on one of like the Facebook groups. I think it was the Pollinator Friendly Yards Facebook group this morning, but it wasn't from you. It was some other Facebook page took it and then put it up, and then it got been shared all over the place. It had like 2.2 million views, I think is what it said.
And I posted the same video on my Facebook days before they posted it, and I think it has like 1,000 views. So they took it and it blew up.
The good thing is when it was shared in that group, there was numerous comments saying, "Hey, go follow the original," and tagged your Facebook page or the Native Habitat Project Facebook page. So hopefully you're getting some people going through that.
Yeah. I didn't see that. That's the bad thing now, is like people will tag me and stuff, and I don't even see it because there's so much to look through, and I can't sit there on my phone all day looking at social media. So, but that was awesome. That one just came to me one day. I was like, if I was trying to destroy an ecosystem and, make the wildlife in that area disappear, I would totally change what their habitat is made up of. I would get rid of everything there that they depend on, all the native plants, and I would replace it with something that's non-native, and I would mow it down so nothing native came back. And then I would plant, non-native species around there, like in my yard or landscaping. And it kind of, I guess that was the idea behind it. I was like, if I was trying to destroy an ecosystem, I would do what most people are already doing around their homes. And so I made that TikTok about it, and apparently it blew up, and I wasn't expecting that one to do that, but it did.
Really, it sends a great message, and it's something that I wouldn't say your presentation was disparaging at all. It just kind of pointed out, hey, this is the stuff everyone's doing already, and not even realizing they're destroying an ecosystem. It really came across well, and I think that's why it blew up, because it resonated with people.
You just described the average American home, basically, and you could have that perfect. There's a presentation that Tom put together that we always laugh at, because the first picture is a finely manicured landscape, and we're trying to say how it's not there. It doesn't have a lot of ecological function, but
it's a little bait and switch. You put it up there, say, oh, and you get everyone saying, oh, look, that looks really awesome. That's what I want my yard to look like. And then you tell them how bad it is.
But everyone is always like, oh, that's what I aspire to. Like, I wish I had that. We're like, no.
Someone even put up like hashtag yard goals in our chats and one of them.
But
I feel like Americans, we have a lot of pride for our country and our states, and we should take pride in our plants that are native to our areas, and it's something we don't even ever think about. So
One of the best stories we had on the podcast is John Mcgee, who has the Native Plant podcast, and he was telling the story about doing design work for a military.
It was like an ex-general or some kind of
an admiral or a general, and he wanted all these things that were non-native. And he's like, I don't know about you, but I like American plants. Like I like plants from Virginia. I don't want plants from Russia. And and it's like that. Like that's when it clicked for his customer. Like, oh, you put it in a way that I understand it now.
Yeah. And when you can do that for people, a lot of people start to understand. And it's been awesome to see all the messages I get from people saying, I never even thought about it until you mentioned it, and it makes sense. And I think that's what I try to talk about, a lot of things that just make sense. And I think that's why a lot of the videos do pretty good. So
is it hard to keep up with now that it's rolling? I would imagine, like for me, I would already be feeling the pressure of what to do next, or and I would want to respond to everyone too. And I don't know that that's necessarily realistic in doing it.
Yeah. Early on, I was able to respond to a lot of folks, and now it's impossible, and I hate it because I'd like to answer everybody's questions. But yeah, that's this over Labor Day weekend, I barely posted anything. I was like, I need a break for 3 or 4 days. So it does get overwhelming, and it's a lot, but it was almost easier to do in the beginning, just because I could respond to people and engage with them, and now it's just impossible. I get a lot of folks asking what should I plant where I'm at. That's probably the number one question, and that's hard to answer because there's no like good resource where I can send everybody to. And I know the Audubon Society has a native plant link where they can put in their zip code, and it'll give a list of some natives to their area, but there's nothing just really detailed, and not every state has a native plant atlas. I know Alabama has one, and that's a good resource, but I'd also try to point people towards iNaturalist. I think that's a good one for folks to get a map and see where everything is found, and that's been a great resource. That was a great resource for me learning about native plants.
I used it a bunch of times this weekend alone at one of the local parks.
Me too. And I haven't gotten into the whole the project side of thing, where you can actually create a project, and then when someone tags something that is encompasses your project, it'll actually show up on you. I know Southeastern Grasslands Initiative actually uses that a lot, but I've used it kind of reverse. I'd searched a plant just to see where I could find it near me, so I could either go and see it, or for us, actually, it's more to approach the landowner or whoever owns that property, see if we could potentially collect seed off of it if it's actually there. That's been one of the ways I've used it. But iNaturalist is fantastic.
And so one thing I tell people is find out what physiographic region you're in. Especially, I don't know if other states are like this, but in Alabama, you can drive 10 miles and you'll go through 3 different regions that could have totally different native plants. And so in mine, I live in the Molten Valley, which is between the Cumberland Plateau and the Tennessee Valley, and there's projects on there like savanna ecosystems of the Molten Valley, limestone barrens of the Molten Valley. And so my house is actually on what was once a savanna, and I could tell that because I got post oaks and chinkapins and things like that growing here. And so I could look at that project and what everybody's seeing growing in the savannas of the Molten Valley, and that's about the best list I could possibly put together for what's native to my front yard. So that's a great resource for me.
We always try to tell people, and it has become complicated because it's like, just look around at your natural areas, and some of the feedback we get is, I don't really have any natural areas left near me, or we're not really sure if it is natural at this point, or if it's just invasives or things like that. So it's especially near us where invasives are rampant. It's hard to tell, but
it is. And it takes you got to kind of, I don't know, over time you get an eye for it and can notice what's native and what looks like it's been there. It's always been there. And a few things I look for is, those post oaks, things like that have been there for forever. Those are great relic species because they live so long. But then, I've recognized places off of just things blooming and stopping on the side of the road and trying to figure out what they were. And lots of native grasses. If I see a big field of blue stem or something and very little non-natives, and usually that means it's probably got a pretty intact seed bank there and not a lot of invasive. That's the one thing I look for.
It's amazing. Like, I just looked at my old property, which I was on for 22 years. And once I started working at Pinelands, I looked at that property very differently. Like, early on, I knew a lot of the trees, which I thought, and the plant material, that was great. But then I started looking at it and realized, classifying everything, like all these plants are facultative wetland or wetland, like, and checking the hydrology. And it's almost like a little bit of a gateway. Like, yeah, you start identifying the plants, and then you start looking a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper, and you realize, oh, I must be in this kind of region, or I must be in a wetland, or I must be in an upland.
Yeah.
And I do that. We were on a nature hike this weekend. I was doing that with my fiance. I was like, all these plants are facultative upland. So what does that tell you?
And was she annoyed by that, or was
completely annoyed? She just wanted to enjoy the walk.
We went on a hike this weekend with my in-laws, and I tried to be quiet and just talk to my wife about, I'm like, oh yeah, that's this plant, this is this plant, and just pointing out stuff. And then she said loudly, isn't it really fun going on hikes with Tom? Actually, she really appreciated it because they were asking about some stuff too. But
yeah, I just shared a post on my Facebook. It said, you deserve somebody who knows the names of all your favorite plants. Love that one, because she just, a lot of times she's just like, oh, that's cool, she doesn't care. So it's funny that other people have that experience too.
But it does pay off in different ways. I know at one point my fiance sent me a text, and she was researching, and she wanted to plant a tree somewhere, and she researched and actually picked a native tree that would go well in that area. Like, and she doesn't want to plant anything that's not native now. So it may not be as overt as walking through and naming everything, but like, I at least know it's made an impact on her life, which is whether she wanted it or not, she got it. But I think, kind of going back a little bit, like, what I appreciate about the TikTok is, even though it's overwhelming and it may be hard to give everyone the advice that they need, you created a space that maybe didn't exist for more people to do it, to help more people. And I think you kind of did that with your Native Habitat Managers Facebook group, because you created a whole resource of people that can help. And I see a lot of questions posted, and I see a lot of incredible advice given from professionals that know what they're doing. So it's a mixture of landowners that are looking to make a difference, and people that can actually give good advice without it being, so many social media groups can be off-putting. And to me, it tends to be people that aren't as knowledgeable, that think they know everything. And you don't get that. This is a very welcoming group that's giving fantastic advice. Was that your intent, or did it just happen that way?
Yeah, that was one of our goals, and that's how it started, really. I think it was one of my Facebook posts. We got to talking. There's 8 of us that are admins, and we all started the group. It was all of our ideas, and we brought it up in this post I made. We're like, there's not a place for hunters to get good advice. There's a lot of deer hunting groups, and the advice in there is usually horrible. A lot of you get 10 bad answers for every one good answer. And we got to talking, and we were like, there should be a place for hunters who care about conservation, who are like-minded and want to manage native ecosystems and manage an ecosystem instead of managing for one type of wildlife. And there should also be botanists and foresters and native plant enthusiasts and all those types of experts in the group as well. And when you think about it, a lot of those folks aren't always on the same page with a lot of things. And we're a little worried about that, because they come from a lot of backgrounds. You have deer hunters and native plant enthusiasts. Those, people usually don't think of those two groups as mingling together and being in the same room. But it's worked well for us. I don't know. I was surprised, because I figured there'd be more arguing and a lot more I guess uninformative comments and stuff like that. But it's been a great group for anybody at any level, because there's a lot of folks who've been doing it for a long time, have a lot of great examples of what their properties look like now, which is really inspirational. But there's also a lot of folks who are just starting out and they have a lot of questions, and you can ask questions there, and 99% of the time it's going to be a great answer from a professional. So
yeah, and that's what I've learned so much through that group, and just for stuff that we want to do on our own farm. And I guess when I first joined, I was incredible to see some people who are, by the general term celebrity, I wouldn't say they're celebrities, but in that space, I would say they're celebrities. You have like Kip Adams and Lindsey Thomas Jr. from National Deer Alliance. I think Doug Duran, who's kind of affiliated with Meat Eaters in there, and a bunch of other like big names in that space were included. Oh yeah, not me. I think I've posted like twice. I'm learning more than I'm posting.
I'm watching and listening, and I haven't added anything just because I feel like so much of this is out of my realm, and I'm looking at it as a learning standpoint for me.
Yeah. Then you have like the Land and Legacy guys who they have their own podcast that is talking about native habitat management on a weekly basis, multiple times a week. So to actually have some extra interaction with them, and then other people who really know probably even more than those guys do and are doing more than those guys do, just don't have the name recognition, is really, really fantastic. And there is a couple arguments, but it tends to be like, when's the best time to do a prescribed burn? And then hinge cutting is the other one. But it's not like it's arguments where both options are really, really good options, and it's which one's going to be the better option, where in some of these other groups you don't see that kind of advice, whether it's a hunting group or you get a lot of bad advice, where in this you're getting two sorts of good advice and you got to pick which one's better.
It's a discussion handled with respect, which I think it's the most important aspect of that, because that's what you don't receive on a lot of these social media groups. And it's I think when you have the right people and you create the right culture from the onset, I think a lot of that has to do with who is the moderator or administrator on the site. So I think if there's 8 of you, I think it's a pretty clear message what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and we're all like-minded too. So it's been easy. A lot of people are like, how do y'all have 8 admins? Like, that's got to be confusing, and it's not. I think it's helped a lot because we're all on the same page. But you mentioned Land and Legacy. Chad Keith was one of the people who helped start it, and Land and Legacy, they're folks I've been listening to for a long time. They're great. They have a great podcast as well. I listen to both y'all guys, and they seem to be on the same page I am with managing ecosystems. But the good thing, the one thing I like about the group is it's not just for land managers and habitat managers. There's a lot of folks on there asking about just around their homes too, small projects where they're trying to get rid of an invasive or want to introduce some native plants to their small property or something. And there's if you got a question about managing land or managing for native habitat, there's going to be somebody in there who can help you out, no matter how big or small the project is.
I think your next mission is a podcast.
Yeah.
We're waiting for your native habitat project podcast.
Yeah.
You can be your first guest.
I've had a lot of people request that, and I don't know if I'm up for it yet. I don't know. It might be where I go eventually, but TikTok working.
I think you have the audience and the right connections that I think that would be an intriguing, some of these things that you're dealing with in the Facebook group, if you can expand on that and hear these people talk about it for an hour, I think that would be invaluable. Like I said, like I don't post anything. I listen and just learn. So I think that's something I'm interested in. I'm saying this for a selfish reason because I would like to.
So Kyle, why was gathering these hunting groups, basically these people who like to hunt and also appreciate native plants, why was that important? I kind of leading you into what I'm hoping you're going to say based on what the regular hunting industry kind of promotes.
It's there's a huge missed opportunity there with sportsmen, and it seems like originally a lot of them were conservation minded, and on the right track, but people quickly saw that, hunters and fishermen, they're willing to spend a lot of money towards managing the wildlife they like to hunt or pursue, and so unfortunately that led to a lot of people marketing things to them, and it's not always things that are actually beneficial, and it's a lot of things that are, instead of managing an ecosystem, it's managing for one type of wildlife, and a lot of times 99% of the time it's with something that's not native, something that's a monoculture that doesn't do anything for our native wildlife or insects other than the one that they're trying to plant for. And a lot of times it doesn't even do as much for that species as they think it does. And so I've that's one of the big reasons I decided to speak up, is because I want to see a change there. I'd like to see hunters get back on track and start managing ecosystems instead of buying into the stuff that they're being sold. And it's not, it's not necessarily their fault. It's been idolized and sold to them for years. And what sold me on that idea is, I guess about 4 years ago, I was managing a property, and back then, I was planting a lot of food plots. I was obsessed with food plots, and I also knew how to manage timber, because I had already graduated from forestry school, and so I was managing timber, cutting out cedars and things like that, opening up areas, trying to get a lot of regeneration of native plants, because I knew that was really beneficial. And so I was doing that in some areas, but there was this 40-acre property, and there was 2 open areas that were maybe combined, maybe an acre, probably not even that. And the first thing a lot of hunters do when they find a property that's mostly wooded is the first open spot, or the only open spot they got, they're going to plant a food plot there. And so that's what I did. And I went in there, sprayed it all off, killed everything, fertilized it, disturbed the soil, and then I went in there and planted a monoculture of food plot seed. And a couple years later, or I guess about a year later, some of those areas on the edge of those fields that I had cut a lot of cedars off of started growing up in things that I had never even seen before. And it was a lot of rattlesnake master, blazing star, gray-headed coneflower. There's like 4 or 5 species of milkweed, senna. There's just a lot of diversity there, and I could probably list 7,500 species that were growing here on this place. And I was like, what in the heck are these things? I'm a forester. I got a forestry degree. At the time, I was working for the State Fish and Wildlife for 3 years, and so I sent some of those pictures to a botanist named Kevin England, and he's became somewhat of a mentor of mine for native plants, and he was like, where is this place? I need to see it. So we went out there, and he was like, this place is incredible. He's like, this is a limestone barren, lots of state listed plants there that were S1s, really threatened. Even I think there's been probably 5 or 6, if not more, county records that have never been seen in my county before. And I was sitting there looking at it, and I'm like, well, last year I killed off the majority of this thing, and now what's there now is not native plants. And I saw that because I had quote unquote improved the soil with fertilizer and stuff, I was seeing a lot of things coming back like that I didn't want. Sericea, Lespedeza, Japanese stilt grass, fescue. A lot of invasives were returning in that area that I had tried to plant a food plot in. So that's become a battle. I've been trying to return it back to what it once was, but that was really eye-opening for me. I was like, how many times has that happened where somebody's came in because they were told they needed to plant a food plot to manage for wildlife. They came in, tried to do that, and ended up destroying what would be the end goal for a lot of folks on the Native Habitat Managers page. They destroyed that and turned it into something that isn't natural, and isn't gonna support an entire ecosystem. So that was really eye-opening for me, and that's when I was like, something has to change. We gotta educate more hunters, and at that time I needed to be educated. So it hit close to home, and so that kind of fed my passion for it. So,
and it was actually more work and more time for you to do, like, to learn that lesson
yeah,
of what to do and what not to do. And it's, I think that's important. And the only way you can do that is by getting all these groups together. I really believe it, not just in groups like that, even in government agencies. So many people are doing such great work, and not everyone knows what everyone is doing. And we've had a lot of callers call in and ask a question, and then the state cooperative extension will call up and say, well, that's what we do, they should come see us. Or NRCS is like, well, we give grants for this, we can give grants for deer fencing, we can get, but not everyone knows what all these other agencies are doing. And it's the same thing in the community with habitat managers. Not everyone knows, or these hunting groups. So to bring everyone together and kind of get everyone on the same page is kind of invaluable.
Yeah, but I still think the predominant message for hunters, it tends to be you need to bring in non-natives to attract deer, or even another thing you hit on a lot is for screening, so that you're not as noticeable getting in and out of your tree stand or tree or your blind or anything like that. And there's a lot of non-natives that are recommended for that when there's great native substitutes. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that too?
Well, let me talk. First, I'd like to say, deer are generalists. They can survive anywhere in a neighborhood, in town. I mean, they don't need specific. They don't have really many specific needs. They can survive basically anywhere. They're like goats, and that's why they can target those deer hunters. When you look at quail hunters or grouse hunters, or some of those species that are more specialists, they have to have their native habitat. You have to manage them with the native plants they would need in their ecosystems, because they need the insects, they need the seeds from those native plants. And so that's where deer hunters have been led astray, because they're generalists, and you could plant anything you want out there, and it's good, and you're going to see deer probably using it because they can survive on anything. But if you use native plants, you're not just helping those deer, you're helping the whole ecosystem. But a lot of things have been promoted for screens. That's been a huge topic of mine on Facebook. Everybody knows me as the guy who hates Miscanthus, and so I think public enemy number one for Miscanthus growers. So and my problem there is they claim that it's, for one, they're planting it for wildlife, and it's does nothing. It's not going to be good for wildlife. But they claim that it's sterile, that it's not going to spread, that it's okay to plant, and that's, to me, that couldn't be further from the truth, because once you plant it there, it's there forever. I mean, you're not going to get rid of it unless you spray it and spend a bunch of time and money to get rid of it. It's going to be there forever. It's not going to just disappear one day, because it's not like an annual or something that you plant with a lot of those food plot mixes that you plant it 1 year, and a couple of years that you don't see it there anymore. That Miscanthus is something that's going to be there forever, and it doesn't do for wildlife what a lot of our natural screens could do, which I don't think a screen necessarily is really important anyways. It's more so for the hunter instead of for the wildlife. But you can use a lot of native species instead of Miscanthus for that screen. And to me, it is spreading. If you're selling it and you're sending it, shipping it all across America, you're spreading a non-native species. And even though it can't spread maybe by seed, which we've been told that before about a lot of non-native things, even though it can't spread by seed, it's spreading because it's being sold, and hunters are planting it in a lot of rural areas where there normally probably wouldn't be a lot of non-native invasives.
Yeah, we've known that Japanese silvergrass has been invasive for over 25 years, and it's still readily available in most states. Probably, I'd say, like like 46 states probably you can still buy it.
Yeah.
And it's an issue. And I know where I used to live, one of my neighbors had Miscanthus planted all over their properties, and then they would cut it and put it in the woods across the street, which was private property. And the woods were loaded with it, you know, and it was that whole, that the woods were all loaded with Japanese silvergrass and lesser celandine, and it was all, the understory was all invasive. So it's, you know, you can see it if you look for it. A lot of people just don't know where to look for it, or they don't realize that it shouldn't be where it's at.
Yeah. And then they claim that this one that they're selling is sterile. And you know, the word sterile doesn't mean much to me anymore, just because they said that about Bradford pear too. If you have to put on, when you're selling something, if you have to say that it's sterile, it probably should be sold. You know, there's that means concern that it's invasive. So if somebody's selling you something and they put on there that it's sterile, just don't buy it. That's my.
We've heard that with purple loosestrife. We've heard that with Japanese barberry. We've heard that with all of these, and it's not necessarily the case.
And when it comes to invasive plants, a lot of people, they don't see it popping up to their own property, or they don't see it popping up nearby where they are, and they don't look in the woods near their house, or they don't look on the long roadsides. I saw a giant Miscanthus growing along Route 80 in northeastern Pennsylvania when I was coming back from the Poconos this weekend, and I was like, "Oh crap, what the heck is that doing there?" It was just two, like right next to each other, just on the side of the road. And how to get there, I don't know, because it wasn't like there was any exits close by. It's somehow I got there. But
and that's been a good thing about TikTok, is I can show show people plants, and once they see them on there, then I get a lot of messages, hey, you know, that I saw this TikTok, and the next day I saw it down the road from my house, and whether that's a native plant and they were excited about it, or whether it's an invasive, and you know, then they knew that if it was an invasive, then they knew that they need to get rid of it. But that's been a great thing about TikTok, is it's just real quick. People can watch a short video and they can learn about a native or a non-native.
And we've seen a lot of great things between what you're doing and foraging, and there's so many people doing some great educational things just for people to learn. With all this positive that we've talked about, do you get any negativity? Like, do you have trolls that go through and you see things and you're like, really? Like, where did this come from?
Not really, but
Okay,
I'm expecting it soon. You know, I have I guess somewhat, just because I'm native plant talk, I get a lot of it. They're not really trolling, but I get a lot of people from I guess Native American talk, and a lot of them are really supportive. But sometimes people are like, you know, you should, you know, because I'm a white person managing native ecosystems, they tend to get upset about that. But you know, that's what I'm trying to do, is replicate what Native Americans were doing in the first place. So that's not really trolling, but that's been, you know, some negative feedback I've gotten. But for the most part, people have been pretty positive, and I'm preparing for that though. So I try to prepare for that, and not put my personal stuff out there too much, just because I'm probably going to get a troll eventually. There's a lot of crazy people on the internet. So,
but it's with that, it's something where when you're talking about native plants, a lot of the people who were probably doing things what we consider the wrong way didn't know they were doing the wrong way. So this is like enlightening to them. It's not necessarily a negative thing. And from what I've seen, you're never really, like I said, with your how to destroy an ecosystem post, you were disparaging it all. You're saying, hey, if I want to destroy an ecosystem, I would do these things, and it just happens to be what everyone's doing. But so there's not a lot to get negative about, and I think it's opening a lot of eyes to, hey, I've been doing this the wrong way, and there is a better way to do it.
Yeah, and there's that's on purpose, because I've seen people sharing about native plants and you know, on social media in the past, and doing it in a way that wasn't really grabbing people's attention. It was kind of off-putting to them, and you know, it's usually videos of people videoing their neighbor using a leaf blower, shaming them, saying, you know, hey, you know, my neighbors are doing things wrong. And you know, anytime you publicly shame somebody, they're not going to get on your side of things. And that's, to me, I was like, that's not the way to go about it. You know, we need to lead by example and, you know, inspire. And so that's what I try to do in my videos. I try to not attack people and say, you know, hey, you have a yard, shame on you. You have non-natives in your flower bed, shame on you. Because I still have some of those things at my house. I'm still trying to get rid of some of those myself. So I can't shame somebody for doing something I'm doing. And I wouldn't want to do that anyways, because that's not a great way to get people on board with planting natives. So
no, none of us are perfect, and we all have our things that we do that maybe don't fit into our line of work or our love, but you do it because it has sentimental reasons or something like that. But it's really easy to post a video of your neighbor leaf blowing and shaming them. It's another thing to post a video of your own yard covered with leaves and talking about all the great habitat that you just created. Like, look what I just did. Like, I just created so much habitat and overwintering nesting ground and all these things that you could really pump up the positive. There's two ways you could do it.
Yeah, exactly. And most likely when you do it that way, your neighbors will be like, oh, my neighbor's leaving their leaves. I can do that. I can get out of leaf blowing for 2 hours. That sounds good to me. But you know, they're not going to do that when you're out there shaming them. So that's not the way to go about it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that should be everyone's homework, because this fall, as the leaves start to fall, leave the leaves one, and then make a video about it and put it on your Facebook saying, this is why I'm leaving the leaves. That's a great way to make it. It's a super easy change, because it's actually less work than what you were doing before. And it provides so many benefits, just making that small change. But people don't realize how beneficial it is.
You could point out the leaves on the ground and the herbaceous material not cut back and all the habitat that you provided, and you just saved yourself all the work. You're sitting there enjoying it instead of blowing the leaves up, cutting the garden back. It's you can give yourself, I would take that over mowing the lawn any day. Day.
And I think we all could hype up native plants a little bit more on, you know, social media and stuff, or show people what we're doing and get others excited. I think that's something anybody can do. And you know, say, hey, if you're from New Jersey or whatever, I just planted this native that's native to our state. This is where I got it. And I think that would go a long way in changing people's mindset here in America.
That is a great idea. Now that we have all this social media and all these Facebook groups and everything that's been done, I can't imagine not having it. Do you feel that it's created more of a sense of community within the restoration field?
Yeah. And you can see that on the Native Habitat Managers page. But definitely, it's created a group of people who can go to each other for advice and share what they're doing and inspire others. I think it's been a huge tool, and you didn't have that in the past. I mean, I don't know how you would have even got in contact with, as many people as you can on social media doing the same thing you're doing. I think it would have been impossible. So it's been super invaluable.
And it's contagious and educational. You know, I was thinking as we were talking, had it not been for the podcast and it had not been for your Native Habitat Managers group, it's possible that we would have never connected. And I think it's important what we're all doing, and it's not just what you're doing in your corner of the country or world. It's learning what everyone else is doing, because it's so diverse and there's so many different things that you could do to be helpful, and how you can help other people and how they can help you. It's just nice that because of social media, we've been able to connect and have this great conversation that might not have happened 10 years ago.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things in the group is, if you've ever seen a post by Keith Horn, I think he's from Illinois. He'll post like once a month a list of like 75 photos of his prairie, and man, that's my favorite thing, is going through there, scrolling through all his pictures and seeing how his property is so productive for wildlife, and what, as seeing all the diversity there, it's an inspiration. So that's something I get a lot out of from the group, is it's a great place to inspire folks and see what others are doing.
Yeah. So I want to challenge everyone to do a lawn video, but we're going to create a hashtag right now that everyone's going to use. I want it to be hashtag Kyle's Project. There you go. And everyone's going to show videos of them leaving leaves and everything, and we're gonna inspire and create some good hashtags.
Yeah, and if you don't think doing something that's important, I'll tell you why it is right now. I just and Kyle, you probably saw me looking down on my phone, but I was going through Facebook and I went through about 20 posts. Has had a bunch of native habitat managers group posts in there too, but there was 4 or 5 different ads, and 2 of them were for or one was Scott's and then one was another lawn care product. I don't remember what it was. So you have 5 ads, and so you're getting all this advertising already. A lot of it is for non-native plants, keeping your lawn looking green, getting rid of the leaves, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. There's no advertising money going into the other side, our side of things, saying leave the leaves, because there's no money to be made there. How are you going to make money by leaving the leaves? So it's really important that people, like, if I'm getting that on my phone as someone who is passionate about native plants and is in a bunch of native plant groups, people who aren't in those groups are getting even less native plant content than I am. So it's up to you, because you have friends that aren't native plant enthusiasts. It's up to you to go out and make those posts so that people know. We need to get this message spread, because if only 2 people on your street are leaving their leaves, it's making a difference, but it could make a lot bigger difference if you had 10 people or 20 people or a lot more.
And there's a lot more money behind the non-native stuff.
Yep.
You know, I don't think I had told you yet, Tom, but someone reached out and said, you're an influencer. We would like you to post or pose with these plants and do Instagram posts. Well, they were all non-native. There was not one. They're like, we'll give you $150 towards plants from our store to take pictures with it. And there wasn't one native plant.
Yeah.
And it was just like, wow. So this is where the money's being spent and what they're advertising to, but none of it is even close to what we're preaching or trying to accomplish.
Yeah. At least we got something that was plant related instead of the beer ones, and the beer ones would have been okay. One kind of fell through, but the pills and
the pills
not
and the
garden hedge trimmer ones, I don't think are for us.
Do you get people reaching out to you for advertising purposes at this point for things like that as an influencer?
Yeah, I've gotten several. Some of them for been like water bottles and things like that I wouldn't be interested in. But recently I've had bigger companies reach out, but that's still in the works. So hopefully in the future I'll be making some videos on things like that. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's great.
There's nothing better than being behind or speaking for a product that you're behind or you believe in, and that's really important. And we mention things all the time that we're not getting any advertising dollars, but we're happy to spread a product that we know is at least a good product that we've had good success with.
Yeah. And it makes me feel good because I spend a lot of time on making videos and stuff, and I don't make much money on it, so that's nice. It's a way to make some money. Just 2 days ago, Mossy Oak sent me like 14 hats. So as from my aspect, I've made it already because I've had hats from Mossy Oak. So if I get nothing else after this, then I'm content because I got a bunch of camouflage hats from Mossy Oak. So
you know what, Tom has some really nice hats.
Yeah, but I had to buy mine.
But it's and that's one thing that I think is important for people to remember, at least in this space. And I can't talk for everyone, but a lot of this isn't for personal advancement. This is for the love of what we do, and that shows with the amount of time and love that goes behind these native plant social media groups and posts and videos. That's all, and Tom can speak for this. The amount of time for the videos that we do, it's time consuming. It's not like a real quick edit and you get it out. Like there's a lot of work that goes behind spreading this message. And we're doing a lot of it after hours, things like that, because you want to spread the love.
Yeah.
I don't know how
exactly.
to say it.
Yeah. For the past 3 or 4 years, I've been finding a lot of roadside remnants and places where there's rare plants or rare ecosystems, and I've been managing those just on my own time, in my free time, burning them and for free, and just to make sure that those places don't disappear and that they stay around. And when I started making TikToks, people were like, well, how do I get your job? And I'm like, well, this isn't a job. I wish it was. Hopefully it will be one day, but it's just, me doing something, as a concerned citizen in my free time. And that's something anybody can do. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work put into it.
That reminds me of a quote that I heard on the Land and Legacy podcast, but they were quoting someone else. And it was, you want to do what I do, but you don't want to do what I've done. Mm-hmm. I'm paraphrasing there, but it was basically, you're like what you just explained. You're doing a lot of this in your own free time. You're doing it for free. You're doing it because you love it. Yeah. And a lot of people want to say, oh, he's got, how many TikTok followers do you have now? Last I checked, it was getting close to 100,000.
I think it's over that. I don't know. I think it's like, I hadn't looked lately, but I think it's like 100 and hold up. 155. So
wow.
Yeah. They want that 155,000 TikTok followers, but they don't want to put in the literally years of work that you've put in, and even stuff that you were doing off camera because you love it so much. To get up to that point, it's a lot of work. And like even what we're doing, we have way smaller of a following than you do, but it's a lot of work. You're giving up hours a week, and we try and scale it down as easy as we can. But
we do a lot of this on our own time just because we want to do it.
Yep.
Like we're not, we're fortunate enough that what we do on, like right now, we're getting paid to do this because we're on the clock. It's a work day for us, but there's a lot of, and I feel very fortunate for that, but there's a lot of it. It's our expenses to make it, the equipment behind it to make it run. And we're happy to do it. We love, we're not complaining about it at all.
What was the first thing that you saw that inspired you to like pull over on the side of the road, or you just stopped while you're walking around and said, hey, I got to make a video of this? What was like the first one that got you to make a video?
Oh gosh. Well, that limestone barren that I destroyed was one of the first ones. It wasn't on the roadside, but I travel a lot with my job as a forester. And so, it was probably one just down the road from my house. It had a lot of big blue stem, or a lot of little blue stem on it. And I made a video about it last fall after I burned it. And I was talking about why I burned it. And I was burning it in the fall trying to promote wildflowers because there were some rare wildflowers there on that site. And that was one of the first ones I made on Facebook that did pretty well. And this year, after that burn, I've recorded almost 50 wildflowers returned, 50 species of wildflowers returned after that burn in the fall that weren't there previously, or that I didn't see the previous year. So that was pretty cool to see. But that was probably my first one. But I was also just making, anytime I saw some neat wildflowers or something, I would make a video about it. And I don't remember where it started, but Porter's goldenrod was another one. That was one that I found, and that's probably my biggest video on TikTok. I think it has over 1 million views on there. And it was a species that Dwayne Estes, who y'all had on, he discovered it in Tennessee. And then I think it's Dr. Sample from Canada found it in Alabama back in like 2003. And that was the first time it had been seen in 160 years. It was first collected in 1840. And it wasn't described as a new species until I think it was 1900. And so it was 160 years since they seen it. And so Simple saw it. He couldn't figure out what it was. Dwayne saw it or found it in Tennessee once at one site. He couldn't figure out what it was. And it took him a couple of years to figure out that it was Porter's goldenrod. And by then that site in Alabama had been destroyed. So Dwayne reached out to me last year about finding that plant. And I was like, well, do you have any idea where it was first found? And he's like, I can get Dr. Simple to send you the I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Location.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the coordinates. But so I look at it and it's like half a mile from my front door where, and I was like, well, that's ironic. So I went up there in Tennessee to help them do some forestry stuff around the site, and I got to see the plant. And the same day I came back, and the first place I stopped, I found it, rediscovered it, and there was about 50 plants there. And this is one of 2 sites in the world where it grows. And for some reason that really caught a lot of people's attention on there. They like seeing that. And of course, I got a lot of comments, this is goldenrod's in my backyard. I got tons of goldenrod here. And I'm in Washington State, and I've got this in my front yard. And I'm like, this is a Porter's gold. There's a lot of species of it. This is one of those, I think there's hundreds of species of goldenrod, but that's been a cool video, and people reacted really well to it. So
now, along with that, I wonder if there's pollinators that you would only, like specialists that you would only see with that community or that plant.
Yeah, I've been watching, keeping an eye out for it, and I take pictures of any of them I see. And I'm not an entomologist, but I'm trying to keep an eye out. Yeah, there could be, and that plant's it relies on savannas, oak savannas, and unfortunately around here, a lot of those oak savannas were some of the first places where neighborhoods were built because they were relatively open, and this site where it's at is actually between 2 houses. It's on a lot that should have a house on it, but got spared, and so it's barely hanging on there, and that's been a cool one to be able to protect and put some signs up to keep it from getting mowed. But,
so what I find fascinating about our talk so far today is we've talked for probably about an hour, and we've only talked about what you do in your spare time.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're a forester as for your paid living. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do for a living?
Yeah. So for the past 4 years, I've been buying timber, which around here, usually timber buyers, they go in and they're looking out for themselves. They're wanting to make the most money off that timber as they can, and that's an area that I've tried to be different. I try to, if a landowner wants to have a timber harvest done and they're dead set on it, I'll make sure that it's done as consciously as possible. And it's not always bad. There's a lot of cool things that return after timber harvest, but so that's what I've been doing for years. I do a lot of consulting, prescribed burning, things like that. But that's also something I'm trying to. I'd like to manage grasslands and stuff like that full time. So and consult. I don't know. I spent a lot of time on the ground, going around, driving, knocking on doors, talking to landowners, and that's how I came across a lot of plants. I was just traveling so much, seeing a lot of things. But at the same time, I don't know. Eventually, I think I might change over from driving and talking to landowners every day, try and change over to running Native Habitat Project and saving grasslands and doing prescribed burns and doing consulting and wildlife stuff. And that's wildlife's really my passion. But I guess hopefully I'll make that transition eventually. But that's what I've been doing for the past 4 years, and it's been good money and paid the bills, and it's got me outside every day and met a lot of landowners, and that's helped me a lot with finding roadside remnants. It's nothing for me to find out who the landowner is, who owns that property, and it's nothing for me to go knock on their door and talk to them for a minute and tell them what they got. So that's been a huge plus for with this job. It's kind of prepared me for that. So
it's interesting that a lot of people think that habitat management is doing nothing, and which maybe in some instances it is, but it's and Tom's brought this up with books and other things with other guests that we've talked to, that habitat management, we've been managing our habitats for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah.
And it's and there's a reason why there's successional forests and things like that. You do need, you can't protect it from everything because everything was there before and played its course, and it all plays a major role.
Yeah. Originally those forests were maintained with, by megafauna, large herbivores would go through and knock over trees and stuff. I mean, that's why things like honey locusts have big thorns to keep them from getting knocked over. And, after we lost all of those, it was managed with fire by Native Americans. And now we think doing nothing is the way to manage it. And that's why, a lot of our ecosystems are collapsing, and they're having gigantic fires run through them. They're not managed right, and it's weird you say that. I was just talking yesterday with a biologist in Tennessee and Alabama. They're trying to put a lot of effort towards restoring quail habitat, and so they're thinning a lot of forest, creating savannas. And the cool thing is, when they do that, it brings in a lot of light to the ground, and you get a lot of cool native species coming back, a lot of wildflowers, and that creates great quail habitat. But they're getting backlash from people, and it's not it's not the groups you would normally think they'd get backlash from for cutting timber. It's deer hunters, and that's has the biggest problem with their timber harvest. And in my opinion, that's insane, because you have shaded out hardwood forest where there's barely anything in the understory. I know it's a huge problem in the Northeast, and in the Midwest, you get so many deer that there's nothing growing in the understory. And so bringing in that sunlight creates more food on the ground there for deer, and it kind of fixes that problem, and provides more habitat. It's not just deer that need those native plants, and when those deer eat them out, and there's eat it down to nothing, then there's there's nothing there left for other wildlife. So when you open up that canopy, bring in sunlight, and you get a lot of growth coming from the forest floor, that's creating a lot more food for those deer. That's going to support them, but it's also going to support things like quail and songbirds, reptiles, insects, and it's crazy to me that they're getting backlash on that, because as a hunter, those spots, that'd be where I'd be hunting where they have all that food and all that cover. And but it's kind of backwards. A lot of deer hunters like to hunt in those open woods where they can see forever, and that's not great habitat.
No, and it's important to mention too that it's very important to have a plan, because some of the backlash up here is where they'll do some cutting to open up spaces, but they didn't have a plan to management, and those spaces become overrun with invasives, because that's what was close by when they made the there was the invasives were already in the seed bank or in the soil. So then when the sunlight's brought in, they just exploded because they're already there, and they didn't do any invasive management either first or after. So that's some of the issues we've seen in our area with the timber cuts.
We have that problem here too in some areas, but for the most part, a lot of areas are pretty free of invasives. It's the places closer to town where there's a lot of invasives present, and you get that response. But yeah, and a lot of the timber's high graded too. That's another thing. They come in and they cut all the best and leave the rest, and then you're left with species like maple, just nothing but maple and beech. And that's what I see a lot of around here. And they cut all the oaks and hickories, and then that forest changes. And so they need to be properly managed. And those public lands where they're doing that, where they're trying to restore quail, they're doing that correctly. I mean, they're going in, and the first thing they're wanting to get rid of is probably the undesirable species, and they're going to cut those first, and they're making sure they leave the beneficial species of trees like oaks and hickories and whatnot. So you got to have a plan, and there's got to be a plan in place. But when people have a plan in place, that's something I think people, especially hunters, need to get behind.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you think of just the mass that hickories and oaks produce for wildlife, leaving those behind as beneficial, and man, just the amount of habitat you're creating and biodiversity by opening that up and letting some of those other things in is something you could just by cutting it open, that you're doing work that you couldn't do if you tried, as far as planting. So it's pretty amazing. And speaking of plants, you were saying that you have a native plant nursery on your yard now. So how's that been going? We'd like you to throw the name out and that a little bit.
It's called Tennessee Valley Natives, and we started it last year. Well, I didn't start it last year. I started collecting seeds, I guess, 3 years ago. I was, wanted to be mostly Alabama wildflowers that I collected seeds from. And so last year around COVID, like, we were planting things as COVID was starting, and we're a little bit nervous about it. We're glad we did, because it kind of took off. But this year my wife's taken over, and she's working the nursery, and I think we've got close to anywhere between 50, 75 species at any given point. and most of those are seeds that I've collected from plants here in Alabama. And originally I was wanting to do it for restoration purposes, like y'all do. I was wanting to use those plant plugs to restore grasslands, and it ended up most of my customers are people, homeowners, who want pollinator gardens and stuff, and we sell at the nursery by appointment. We like to have our weekends like y'all do, so we sell by appointment. You can contact us on Facebook or Instagram, but we also set up at our local farmers market, and that's been a great experience for us because, and to me, it's worth losing a few Saturdays, setting up at that farmers market. We're selling native plants to people who aren't out looking for native plants. They're just coming by, and they're interested, and they're like, so what is this like? And I'm like, well, every single thing we got here is native to Alabama. And it intrigues a lot of people, and I found that is a great way to reach people that like plants and they like growing things. They're at a farmer's market. They probably have an appreciation for plants, and they might not know about native plants. So that's been a great place to educate and also sell some plants for us. So.
I think it's not that people are generally against native plants. They're just not really educated.
They just don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what they are. And this is a conversation my wife and I had the other day where she's like, before I met you, I'd heard of native plants, but I didn't know what made them so special or really what they were. I didn't know that they were any different than other plants that you get. So I just think a lot of people just don't know that there is a drastic difference between native plants and what you're going to find at your conventional garden center.
But if you're just watching TV or listening to the radio, you get fed that a clean, nice looking green lawn without weeds is what you're looking for, or you need this mosquito service to spray to keep all the bugs away from you. And it's, they don't know that there's all natural products out there that can just repel mosquitoes and keep you good without killing all their predators and all of that. It's just where the money's at, and sometimes it's what you get fed.
Hey, one other thing you recently started was the Native Habitat Project. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that too?
Yeah, well, I guess I was kind of forced into it because of TikTok. Everybody was reaching out asking how they could help. They wanted to contribute. They're asking, people wanted to know what I was doing, and I didn't have a name to it. It's just what I've been doing for years. So I've had some help from a guy. He was like, this is what you need to do. He was like, you got to start something that people can get behind and support. And so that's what I did. That was kind of the birth of the Native Habitat Project, and started Facebook, Instagram, and hopefully I've been posting on YouTube, but hopefully I'll kind of do more of that in the future. But it's a place, it's what we're doing is basically what I've been doing for years, saving roadside remnants, grassland remnants, rare plants, because like you said before, there's really no money for that to manage those places. And I don't get paid to do it. The landowner is not going to front that cost in most cases. And so it's up to us basically. And so that's what I've just been taking the initiative to do. And there are programs probably for, with the state or with Fish and Wildlife or something, but those take time, and it's a lot, there's a lot of time and rules that go into play there. And a lot of people are scared off by that fact. And so with this, I'm just like, I can make things happen. I can go in and say, here's a rare plant. This area needs burned this fall to make sure it keeps, existing. And then I also put up a lot of signs on roadsides, no mowing, no spraying. That's how a lot of these places get destroyed. Ironically, mowing is probably the reason they're there in the first place, but repetitive mowing over summers before they go to seed, that'll eventually, they won't be able to reproduce anymore. So I've been doing that a lot, putting up those signs, protecting those places. But it's I don't know, it's just something I recently started, and a lot of people have been showing their support on Patreon with that. And it's been awesome to see this many people wanted to support what I've been doing, because I've been doing it for years, thinking I was one of the only people who cared about these places. Nobody knows what these native plants are. Nobody even pays attention to them, just because not many folks are educated on it. And it's nice to see that this many people cared about something I've been doing for years. So that's been really awesome to see. And the support has been great, because I can finally, I have some money to put into making some signs, buying, things to burn or whatever. And it's been great, because I can't just do things for free forever. My life would probably kill me. I just kept focusing on these places, managing them for free and not actually working. So it's been able to allow me to do that, and that's been awesome.
Where can people find your Patreon page? Or
well,
on Patreon?
On my Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, there's a link in the bio to my campsite page that has my Patreon, YouTube, all the social medias on there. So if you find any of my social media accounts, you can look in the bio and find that link.
We're gonna post links to all of those in the show notes, as far as on the website. People can go and find you and contribute and help all they want. Hopefully we can steer some more people your way.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, Tom, do you have any other questions before we launch into the last
I'm sure
one?
I have a ton more questions, but I don't want to take up too much time.
So as you know, we always end with the same question before we go into final thoughts. And it's always probably the hardest question. And that's, what is your favorite native plant?
Bradford pear.
Listen, we'd be lying if we didn't say there was one guest that gave us an invasive seriously as their favorite native plant, because they were just unaware that it wasn't native, and we had to cut it out.
well, mine's a post oak. I like post oaks. I think oaks in general are really beneficial for ecosystems. They do a lot, and post oaks. As a forester who likes grasslands, they kind of exist in both ecosystems and savannas and stuff. They like fire and I don't know. I just really like post oaks, the way they look. I think they have a really cool look to them.
I think that's the first time anyone's mentioned that one.
Oh,
what do you think? I don't think we've gotten oaks before. It's either been general or white oak, and a lot of that is because Lepidoptera. So, but no, great. That's a great choice. And that's one that you don't hear too often, that I think is an important species. So I love that you mentioned that one.
The native plant, or the native habitat project logo is a post oak leaf. So it's in our logo as well.
Awesome. So we always kind of finalize everything up with a final thought. This is where we give you the floor. And you can use it however you want. If you want to summarize or promote something, or however you want to use it, we're going to hand it over to you, and you could do whatever you want.
All right. Yeah. I'd encourage people to check out the Native Habitat Native Habitat Managers page. I get those two confused all the time now. So that's a great place for anybody to check out. I encourage folks to use iNaturalist and start learning the plants in your area. Look, the way I did it was, when you're driving around, if you see anything in bloom and you don't know what it is already, stop and pull over and take a quick picture of it like a crazy person and jump back in your car, and then learn what that plant is. That's how I learned a lot of the plants around my area. And I think a lot of people would get enjoyment out of that. It's been something I've really enjoyed, and make you feel closer to the area you live in, and really have a respect for the native plants in that area. So that's my advice. That's how I really got into native plants, is just learning what's around me. And anybody can do that nowadays with iNaturalist and any of these plant ID apps. So
awesome. I think that's great.
Oh yeah.
I use it all the time. I've been working in the nursery industry over 30 years, and I use iNaturalist all the time, because sometimes you're just not sure. You're not in the field all the time to really make that call.
Yeah,
so
and being at a nursery, we see stuff when it's small, but there's some I can't remember what tree it was. I was walking around just in the woods behind our farm, and I saw this tree, and I'm like, that looks really familiar, but I can't remember what it was. And I took a picture, and it was something I knew exactly what it was. It was a 30-foot tall tree, and not a 3-foot tall tree, like we grow it.
Yeah. I that's happened to me with hackberry.
Mhm.
That's something we
Yeah.
only ever see as a 2 to 3 foot tall tree, not as a 40 foot tall tree out in nature. So it's a great way to learn, and hopefully it gives you a nice reference to go back. Also, if you're like, what was it that I saw? Because it keeps track of all the things that you searched for. So
and it's funny you mentioned jumping out of the car, because my wife actually did that twice in the last probably week and a half. We were cruising down the highway and she's like, you see all those flowers? I need to figure out what that is. And it actually was clematis.
Okay.
Invasive clematis is blooming all along 295 now. And then the other one, I can't remember what it was, but we were sitting in some traffic and she just got out of the car and went and took a picture of it, got back in, looked it up, and found out what it was. But I do that all the time. I'll pull over, or just walking around, and even stuff that I know, I just want a confirmation on it. It's like, I'm pretty sure it's this, but I don't know for sure. Goldenrods I always mix up.
And I like that it's community based, and that people can chime in on what you claim it is, and someone else will confirm. That's what I think it is too. So it's just nice having a couple other sets of eyes on it, just kind of, because it's not 100% accurate, but at least it gets you close.
One of my favorite about it is the map. If you find a species and you look at the, you click on the information on it, you can see the map where everybody else has seen it. And that's an awesome tool, because around here, if I see something just very few people have seen in Alabama or the Southeast, and then I see a lot of them in the Midwest, I know it's probably a prairie species and probably pretty rare for the state. And there's even been plants that I've been the first one to put them on iNaturalist in Alabama, and that's cool too. So
that's pretty awesome.
I like looking at the map just to see where everybody else has seen the plant.
Oh yeah.
Oh, totally. Tom, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So mine is also about my wife. I talk about my wife a lot lately.
That's a good thing.
Which isn't a bad thing.
That's a good thing.
She's learned a lot more about native plants, which is really exciting to see. But it's she is also like an avid TikTok fan. And she started, I've kind of like disparaged TikTok on this show a couple times. So I guess I'm getting old and crotchety now that I'm 32. But I don't know. All this TikTok stuff I saw was younger people, and I'm like, and it was, I don't know. I was sour to it. But and I was like, I think it would be a really good base, because you're reaching a whole different demographic with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram too. But and then I was so happy to see that you were doing it. But anyway, my wife she loved TikTok, so she started a nursery TikTok page for Pinelands Nursery. And then I'd send her some videos. I'm on TikTok, but I don't have anything to do with it. I just send them to her and she puts it up. But she came across your page, and I had seen your video on Facebook, and then I saw that she was watching. I'm like, oh, I know that guy on Facebook. And then she's like, no, you don't. You don't. She thinks you're this big celebrity, and she was impressed that I knew who you were. So she wanted to say that she's a big fan of what you're doing too.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I used to think TikTok was garbage too. So now I guess I changed my mind on that.
Yeah.
Well, let's, and part of my final thought is a lot of social media, unfortunately, is garbage. And you kind of have to wade through it to find something a little bit more inspiring, because a lot of people tend to focus on the negativity rather than the positivity. So I love that there's social media that for the most part doesn't get used properly, but used properly, it does post good results. And it's all, this is a common theme. It all comes down to, it's a lot of people doing it for the love of it, not for monetary value, even though we would all like to, benefit from it, hopefully, so you can continue to do it and do it better and do more of it. But a lot of what you're seeing as far as this industry, it's being done for the love of it, for restoring nature to what we remember as children, or what our grandparents remember. And just, we see the things that are bad and hoping to educate more people to do more positive things in the community, in their own yards. Or, I mentioned this past holiday, I went to a state park in Pennsylvania that's 1,700 acres. And what I loved more than anything was that we were commenting as we were walking through the amount of different races and nationalities, and how many people were speaking in languages that we didn't know, and we realized that everyone was enjoying the same natural space. And I love that. I love that more than anything. I think so many races and nationalities were represented. And then I started to think, how many people think that being close to nature means going to a place like this and not necessarily having it when they go out their door, and I love that we're getting closer, I think. Now, hopefully, like, everyone realizes, hey, you can have this. You don't have to. It's great to go somewhere and enjoy it as a community, but you don't have to. Nature isn't some place that you go to. It can be part of you and there. So, and I think that's a very rambling final thought by me.
No, it's good thing too. But
yeah, that happened. That hits close to home to me because, and probably not many people know this. I went to a historically Black university where 98.5% of the people there were African American. The other 1.5% were Asian or Hispanic, and then there was me there, and so I was vastly outnumbered. But we had a forestry program, and it was awesome to see people of different colors enjoying the outdoors and learning, and so that's something that I really believe in too. I'd love to see others out enjoy the outdoors, and TikTok has been a great place for that. There's a lot of people of color who are who are foraging and doing things like that outdoors, and it's really inspirational for others, I think. So
yeah, I love it that it's nature doesn't have to be inclusive or all exclusive, I should say. Like it includes, it should be inclusive to everyone. And it was just interesting to see all these different nationalities, how they enjoyed those natural, like we just sat and people watched for a good half an hour of how everyone was enjoying it differently. And it was we just had such a great time watching other people enjoy themselves. And, a lot of times you think of going to a park or going to a natural area and being by yourself, and you want to enjoy that peace of mind and a little bit of quiet and being alone. But there was something to be said about enjoying it with a large amount of people, all enjoying it for different reasons. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty inspiring to me. That made me look at it completely different than how I have been looking at it. It was like an aha moment for me.
Yeah. Well, there was my final thought for your final thought. So I think we all have final thoughts there.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, but that's going to wrap it up. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoy listening to Kyle. Oh, crap. I forgot you said it already. Was
Lybarger.
Lybarger. I'm going to have to remember that. And make sure you go and support the Native Habitat Project. For more information,
I didn't put it down because I wasn't sure where to go, but it's a campfire page. Do you know the web address for your campfire page off the top of your head?
I think it's campsite, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
Sorry.
It's on my TikTok. It's Instagram and Facebook, so you can find it there.
All right. What's your TikTok handle?
It's Native Plant Talk for TikTok, and then Native Habitat Project on Facebook, and So
awesome.
Thank you everyone for listening to Native Plants, Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
We're going to give a big thank you to the Egocentric Plastic Men for our theme music. So now that we're getting close to a new year, are we going to open it up? Are we going to do all new theme music next year?
If you want.
Do you want to do a contest again? And
it is only September.
No, but we got to come. But we're not going to remember it till December before we put it out there. But maybe we'll have new theme music next year. But this year, for our Meet the Guest episodes, it's the Egocentric Plastic Men. Make sure you stream or buy their songs wherever you consume music, and live music is back. I know they're playing live music. So if you're in the Philly area, make sure you go see them, or any of your local artists, make sure you support them as well. You can follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery or Native Plants _Healthy Planet, and YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Keep it coming on the question and answer line. The number is 215-346-6189. I will repeat that, 215-346-6189. We already have a couple questions and comments for the next episode of The Buzz, and Saul weighed in. He was thrilled about the contest we're having about Sketch Saul. So he was a little more, we were concerned that he was a little laid back. Well, he ramped it back up again. So, and we'll make sure if you call in, we'll play your question or comment on a future episode of The Buzz and respond to it. And let's keep going on the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. The group just keeps growing, and I couldn't be more proud of how polite and kind everyone has been and accepting. So let's keep that going over there.
So we now have Native Plants Healthy Planet t-shirts, and you can find them right on our website, www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. There's a little banner at the top that says t-shirts. Click on that. It'll take you to our Teespring store, and all the profits that we make off those shirts are going directly to support some of the organizations that we've had on the podcast, some of these nonprofit organizations that are doing great work. So, and we should be making our first donation on this next Buzz episode.
Yeah, episode 71. Make sure you tune in.
So I think we only need to sell like one or two more, and then we're doing it. So if you're hearing this, you got to buy the shirt.
Buy a shirt.
So you can always listen to our podcast, Native Plants Healthy Planet, directly at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. Also check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, really wherever you consume your podcast. When you're there, we've preached it last time, how important it is to leave a 5-star review and hit subscribe, and definitely recommend this to a friend. It goes a long, long way.
We did get a new one. They're going to be your listener shout out.
Oh,
next
good
episode.
Good. I looked the other day. I didn't see any.
It just showed up this morning.
Oh, awesome. So hopefully it's nothing embarrassing. I have to say.
No, it's not.
Well,
all good things.
So with that, thank you, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone. Kyle, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today and spending it with us. This was a fantastic conversation. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Anytime at all. And we have a Buzz episode coming up next week, so make sure you tune for that. Until then, everyone, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.